Qualichem, supporting the water treatment community since 1990. At Qualichem, we say the blender matters. And here are some things that matter at Qualichem. An unparalleled support staff. We have 3 certified water technologists on staff to support your technical needs. This means you get the expertise you need from someone who has walked in your shoes. With one of the strongest support staffs in the industry, Qualichem offers support in technical, sales, application, and lab support. To find out more about Qualichem, go to scalinguph2o.com/Qualichem. Once again, that's scalinguph2o.com/Qualichem. At Qualichem, we know the blender matters. Welcome to the Scaling Up H2O podcast, the podcast where we scale up on knowledge so we don't scale up our systems. I'm Trace Blackmore, the host of the Scaling Up H2O podcast. And Nation, every so often for fun, I look and see what happens on this day, the day that this podcast was released. I actually did not have to look up this day. I have a poster outside in our office that marks all of the different patches of the NASA Space Shuttle program. And I will tell you, on this very day in 2011, NASA launched the very last Space Shuttle mission. That was the Space Shuttle Atlantis, and that was Space Transport System 135. And after that, we had no more Space Shuttle program. Nation, ever since I was a little kid, I was fascinated with the Space Shuttle. As I mentioned, I've got a poster outside that has every mission patch of the Space Shuttle on it. And I just remember I loved studying everything I could learn about the Space Shuttle. I was super fortunate because we never planned to go to a Space Shuttle launch, but we did plan to take a cruise out of Cape Canaveral. And they had postponed a Space Shuttle launch, I think 2 or 3 times. And it just so happened the night we were staying over on our cruise, we got to see the Space Shuttle Discovery launch. And Nation, it wasn't just a launch, it was a night launch. I cannot describe how amazing that was. Imagine everything you could see covered in a bronzy copper tone. And you were able to see the launch, the shuttle rotate, and just keep going up and up and up. It was one of the coolest experiences of my life. That was December 9th, and that was Space Transport System 116. Of course, now we don't have space shuttles. I think we're launching Teslas into space. I don't know if you've got something that you're just very fond of from your childhood, but I could not get enough Space Shuttle. I remember when I was in 4th grade and the entire school was gathered around different televisions in their various classes, and we watched the Space Shuttle Challenger explode. And of course, that extinguished the life of 7 crew members, one of which was Christy McCullough. And she, of course, was a school teacher. And I remember that was probably the event that got me super interested into the space program because NASA was really pumping a lot of information into the school systems. And we had a lot of assignments around the NASA program. And then, of course, to watch that explode, that was just a horrific thing. As a 4th grader, I can remember that. I remember we actually went home from school early, and of course, everybody was talking about that. And today, there's no more Space Shuttle program. Now, it's really interesting, all the new leaps and bounds that SpaceX is doing with the space program. But just thought I would mention a little something extra about today's date and what happened on today's date back in 2011. Well, looking forward, a date I want you to put in your calendars is the hang on July 11. This is where we get together to network with everybody in the Scaling Up Nation. So I would love it if you could join me at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. All the information that you ever wanted to know about the hang is very easy to get. You can go to scalinguph2o.com/hang. That's HANG. While you're in your calendar, go ahead and mark down August 6th through 8th. That's when the Water Efficiency and Conservation Symposium is taking place in Chicago, Illinois. And we'll have all of that information for you on our events page. While you're there, you can check out the American Chemical Society Fall Expo, and that's August 18th through 22nd in Denver, Colorado. And then our good friend Waleed Curie is going to be in Saudi Arabia, the Global Water Expo. So if you're over there, by all means, go visit our friend Waleed, and we'll have all of this information and more for you by going to scalinguph2o.com and then going over to our events section. You will find everything that you ever wanted to know about events that you could attend in the industrial water treatment community. Nation, one of the most fulfilling items I think I ever did was join the Association of Water Technologies and talk about doing something that pays you back. So many things that I enjoy in my daily life started because I decided I wanted to give some time to the Association of Water Technologies, and that's where I met our next guest. My lab partner today is Fred Shurtz of Precision Chemical, a division of Brown Labs. Welcome, Fred.
Well, thank you, Trace. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, as you mentioned, we waited until episode 369 to have you on, but the time is here and the Scaling Up Nation is ready to meet Fred.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. 369. Wow. It took you a while, right?
Exactly. Well, the wait is over. Would you mind introducing yourself to the Scaling Up Nation?
Sure. Yeah, I've been in water treatment since 1988. I started with NALCO and did 6 years with them and 9 years with Betts. And then in 2003, I basically quit my average paying job and started with nothing with my own company as Precision Chemical. So I'm employee 001. And then it took me a little bit to get going, as you might imagine. In 2003, I begged, borrowed, and stealed to go to the AWT conference in Phoenix. And geez, some of the people I met there, Trace, in 2003 are still my really good friends. In fact, my partner Lee Brown was one of the guys I met there. So it's been an awesome experience. So we've grown quite a bit since that time. We're up to like 16 people in 2021, and then we merged or sold out to Brown Labs. He's the primary owner, and I'm a secondary owner. I'm a minority owner, and it's been going great. We've really enjoyed it. We've grown the company quite a bit, and it's been a lot of fun.
I'm thinking back in 2003, I actually wanted to go to the AWT in Nashville. And the person I was working for didn't think it was a good investment. Well, a year later, I was running my own company, and that was where I put all of my money to get involved with the AWT. And like you, I'm sure glad I did.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I'm not lying. Some of the people who are there are still there. It's been great.
So, if you can think back and what you did before water treatment, what got you into water treatment?
Oh, I'm just like everybody else. I went to college to be a water treater, right? And
Yeah,
there
we
is
all signed up for that degree program.
right that doesn't exist. I know. And by hook or crook, we ended up in water treatment, and that's exactly what happened to me too. I'm an engineer by degree and went to work for out of college, went to work for a frac company, believe it or not, in 1983. And then in 88, I went to NALCO, and NALCO, here they are, a specialty chemical company. And so I kind of got into it there, and then it's just developed into, man, this is fun. I totally enjoy this part of it. So that's how I got into it.
So how did you even know that NALCO was hiring? And when you saw what they were hiring for, why did you say, I want to look into that further?
Well, I guess the best way to say that is, when you're working for somebody as an engineer, you're doing your best you can do, and you kind of hope and pray you get a little bit of an increase every year. Whereas if you're in sales, you really get to control your own destiny quite a bit. So if there's no ceiling, and usually there's a floor, but there's no ceiling to it. So you can go ahead and earn a lot of money in the sales market if you treat people right and do the right thing. So that's why I chose that.
When it comes to sales, you are probably one of the best out there when it comes to water treatment. So I'm curious, how do you define sales? When you're teaching people in your company, we're going to go out and we're going to sell water treatment products and services. What comes next? What mindset do you give them?
Okay, so it's never a quick process. It's just not a quick process. I've stolen from Dave Ramsey that we are a crock pot, not a microwave. This doesn't happen quickly. You have to develop relationships with people, and the only way you can really have lasting relationships is to be honest, to be upfront, and to work your tail off for them. So that's the key. It's relationships first and foremost, attitude, working your tail off, and then the technology. But you got to have some technology too. But it's really those first three things.
You mentioned Dave Ramsey. I've got to meet him a couple of times, and I love that he says nothing good comes from a microwave. If you want good barbecue, it's got to be in a smoker or a crock pot. I think that's a great adage for pretty much anything that's worthwhile doing. But I'm curious, you've certainly had some mentors in your life. So can you speak on that? And as a follow-up question, are you currently mentoring somebody?
Well, mentors for me, those are usually people that you work with along the way. The first company I ever worked for, the frat company, I had a boss there, Dick Remington. He was a really good guy, and I watched him. He got people to like him and to respect him, and that's number one thing that he did, and he was super good at that. Other mentors, really, there are a lot of mentors that I picked up at the AWT that have been doing this a long time, and they're super good at what they've done. And as far as me mentoring other people, I think if you're a manager of anybody, you're by default some sort of a mentor to them. So I've got 7 people that work for me directly. Well, actually 10 if you count the service technicians. And they call, they ask questions. They know sometimes, believe it or not, all they want is a calming voice, and that's okay. And hopefully that's me. But it depends on the situation, I guess, right? But that's kind of where we are.
I can't recall which book it was, but it was one of the Dan Sullivan books. And he said if you really want to change the mindset, if you're going to lead people, or if you're going to hire people that are going to lead people, or you're going to write the job description of people that are going to lead people, you never write the word manager. You substitute the word coach. And it sounds like that's what you're saying.
Yeah, it is. You've got, I have a saying that I won't ask my people to do anything that I won't do. And they're in a heap of trouble on that one because I'll do everything. I'll climb up on cooling towers. I'll dig in there and do whatever we got to do. But they see that, and it does matter to the customers. See that too. It does matter because, it's not disingenuous, Trace. It's really not. I love doing it. It's enjoyable. So yeah, that's what we do.
And it goes both ways. I'm thinking back when we were in a different facility and a driver that had too many adult beverages ran into our mailbox and we weren't getting mail. And of course, that's where the checks come in from our customers. So we had to fix that pretty quickly. It got over 100 degrees in Georgia that day, and I was digging out the old post and putting in a new post and put the new mailbox up. Didn't really think anything of it. But years later, somebody that worked for us was complaining about something that somebody asked them to do. It was probably me. And one of the other guys that was with me during that mailbox time, he said, look, Trace was out there on the hottest day of the year, replacing that mailbox, dodging traffic coming through. He's not going to ask you to do anything that he wouldn't do himself. And you're
Yeah.
not out there in 100-degree weather. And I got to tell you, just to realize that, okay, that's, you hope to be that kind of boss, of supervisor, but to see, okay, people are looking, people are seeing what you're doing. I love that you say, you've got to be the person that people want to follow.
Yeah. And people, believe it or not, people are looking at all times. Integrity is when nobody's looking. That's on your own. But people are watching all the time. And if you're the technician and you want to become the rep, would be the best technician you can be, and that leads you to becoming the rep. And if you're the rep, be the best rep you can be, and that leads to a lot more sales. So yeah, that's exactly right. You've got it nailed.
How did you decide, and what was going on that you said, you know what, I'm going to start my own water treatment company?
Okay, I come from a long line of farmers. My dad was a farmer. My brothers are farmers. My dad's dad, my grandfather, great grandfather, and they got this land a long time ago. And I'm not 100% sure on this, but I believe it was because one of my great great uncles was a colonel in the War of 1812, and that's what they gave them some land for their beginning. I believe that's how it got started. When my family's still on that property, so I learned a lot from them. So I learned a lot from being a farmer. There's probably nobody that is a more independent person than a farmer. You put crops in the ground in the spring, and you hope and pray that you're going to have crops in the fall. And a typical farmer discussion is like this: oh, I want some rain. Oh, not too much rain. And I want some sun. Oh, not too much sun. And now I need rain. Not too much rain. It goes back and forth like that. So they're an independent lot. But my family's always had their own business. So I knew I wanted to do my own business. I didn't know it was going to be in water treatment until probably around 2000. Then I started kicking the idea and thinking about it and how to do it. So that's about when I started thinking about it.
So, all the things that you now know after starting your business, and of course, we've got governmental compliance all the way down to how to write a safety data sheet and everything in between. I guess that's compliance as well. We just have so many things that we know now that we didn't when we first started our businesses. Knowing all those things and of all the headaches and things that go along with that, would you have started your business knowing everything that you know now?
100%, without a doubt. It's a great opportunity to make a difference for a lot of customers, and I just love doing this part of it. It's a blast. I feel like we can out hustle the big boys that are on the block. It takes, we've heard the stories about getting deliveries. Gee whiz, in some cases it's a month to get delivery. Some cases it's just longer, but standard delivery is 3 weeks, and that's just not acceptable sometimes. So I felt like we could do something that could make a difference and could help people out a lot faster and really kind of jump over the bar that they were used to seeing, and then and try to grab that bar on the way up. And if you miss it, you can still grab it on the way down. So that was our deal.
What would you say one of the most difficult hurdles were or was that you had to overcome as you were growing your business, as you were starting your business?
Hurdles for me was not necessarily customer based hurdles. It was usually back office hurdles, making sure I got the accounting correct and the things that are not the passion for me that I have to do on or I had to do on the weekends. And quite frankly, that's one of the biggest things that attracted me to my friend Lee Brown and Brown Labs is because they were going to handle all the back office stuff. And we merged, and now I get to do the fun stuff again. Well, I still got to do it before. I just did the back office stuff on the weekends and so forth. And my kids live 3 hours away, and I would grab a stack of paperwork, and my wife would drive the car up to see him, and I'd be in the back seat with my laptop and checking out paperwork there as we went along. So, and I got to admit, I'm glad a camera didn't see me, because some of these days it was pretty bright, and I had reading glasses on with sunglasses over top of that. So if you can imagine how bad that looked, that was me going down the road.
Thinking back for me, I didn't know what EBITDA was. I didn't know what all those different formulations that you have to know if you're running a business now. So I don't know. That's probably by design. Now, if I were to ask myself the question, would I have had the confidence to start my business when I did? If I knew all the stuff I didn't know, I would have been terrified.
Yeah. If we knew then what we know now, we would be rock stars coming into this business, no doubt about that. But that's not life. That's just not life. You learn as you go. There's no manual for racing kids, doing life in general. There's just no manual, and everybody has their own path to go down.
So, speaking of paths, your day to day has changed probably multiple times throughout your career. Can you take us through that evolution?
Okay, let's just start with the precision chemical part of it. So when you quit your job and you start with nothing and have zero customers, I want to tell you something. Your wife is all of a sudden very interested in what you're doing that day. She wants to know, did you make any calls? Did you get any headway? And I don't blame her. I had a seventh grade son and an 11th grade son at the time. When's the best time to do that? Well, I don't know that there's ever a great time to make the leap, but she was very interested in. So my day to day was really just 100% sales. You have to have sales to grow. And it's very difficult for a person to start in a territory with zero sales. You have to have the right mindset to be able to do that. So my day to day started out that way, and then it transformed to a little bit of where do I get the products and how I get in deliveries. And at the first, I don't want to say 2 or 3 years, it was pretty much me selling and delivering and servicing my accounts, and then I consulted for a friend in Indianapolis, and he wanted to sell his company, so I bought his company. So I inherited three people at that time, and the one of the guys that I inherited way back at that time is still with me, Nick Coffin. He does a great job for us. Really love what he's always done with us. So, um, and that changed things quite a bit. Now I had to do a lot more accounting. I had to do a lot more planning, and I traveled quite a bit more because I had to go from southern Indiana to central Indiana, making sure everything is going okay. And from there, it just kind of blossomed into doing that in bigger and more places. We ended up buying another company in Columbus, Ohio, in 2019, and so we have people in basically about 4 states right now in this division, anyway.
So, fast forward up to today, what's your typical day to day like?
Day to day, that's a tough one. Maybe week to week would be better.
Fair enough.
I get a day or two in my office throughout the week. It seems like we're doing a lot of Teams meetings. That's kind of started since COVID, and they're quite efficient to do those. So we have a lot of those with the combination of the company and so forth. But the 3 days a week, I'm pretty much on the road. I'm with customers with my technicians or my reps, and we're out helping customers. We're trying to find more customers that we can help, and that's basically what I'm doing, hitting the road for probably 3 days a week.
You brought up sales a couple times. I've brought up sales a couple times. So, let's bring up sales again. How do you get new business?
Again, you've got to earn some trust with these people. They've got to understand that you're not there just for you. You're there to try to help them out. I know I talk a lot. You think I talk a lot, but I really listen a lot when it comes to those customers. You've got to understand, and you have to ask questions what they're saying, and paying attention to, sometimes it's just as simple as body language, that you've got to talk to them. If they cringe when you say, whatever you say, that means it's not the right direction. That's why face to face is way better than a phone call. So I think it just comes down to this. If you're just genuine with people and they have a need for what you have, then it's a good thing. And I tell people every single time. If this is not better than what you're doing, then please stay where you are. How can I ask you to join us if it's not better than what you're doing right now?
You mentioned face to face, and of course, that's what we all want the interaction to be. It's getting harder and harder after our COVID experience. I remember I was teaching somebody how to cold call not too terribly long ago, and every single facility we went to, there was no front office reception. There was a book there, which we took a photo of course, and tried to figure out who we needed to call. But if you don't know who that person is, the days of asking, can you please help me? I'm trying to find out who I need to talk to. How do you get around that? What are you doing now?
Yeah, I wish I had a crystal ball to tell you the right answer to that. And as usual, if you're in the business for long enough, you get a lot of warm leads from other people that you deal with, mechanical contractors, other customers, and we see a lot of customers move from point A to point B, and we follow them along those lines. And you ask those people, "Hey, do you know who's taking care of this plant way over here?" And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. You got to get a warm lead in there, or you're never going to get in. And even if you do get a warm lead, it still takes some time. The key is to know that when they say no to you right away, they're not saying you're a terrible person, no, go away and never come back. They're saying you have this little bitty stack of benefits as far as I can see, and I have this higher stack of benefits right now, and I don't need you yet. But you stay with them because you never know when they're going to need some help. So you have to be persistent. Persistency is, you have to have that. If you're not that, you're not going to sustain a good living doing this.
I remember back in the days when my dad was in water treatment, he would always wear a lab coat. And a lot of places you'd had to wear a hard hat. And he used a clipboard and he would just walk into places with a lab coat, a hard hat, and a clipboard. And people just gave him instant authority. Okay, well, you've got all that stuff. You must know what you're talking about. And he would just ask, can you introduce me to your plant engineer? I don't know if they thought he was an inspector or what, but I don't know. I don't know if that works these days.
I think maybe I should get the lab coat and put like EPA as a tag or something on that, so I can.
Well, don't get
Wait,
arrested. Don't
no,
don't
uh,
impersonate
well,
yourself.
I don't. I guess you're right. I shouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. No. And I can see that being the case. I really can.
So let's say we're trying to get into this bottle making facility that's on our route, and you don't know anybody there, and there's no warm lead. What would you do, Fred, to start making introductions to get to know somebody to try to get that business?
Well, that's a tough one. If it's super cold, you have to begin with the end in mind. It's going to take a long time to get in there. Again, this being you have to have a long term mentality.
We're in the crock pot.
Yes, sir. Yeah, people. In my experience is people don't call you and say, "Oh, thank goodness you answered the phone. Will you be my water treater?" I've only had one kind of experience like that in my 35 years. So you have to be persistent. You have to be patient to keep calling and trying to find the right person. It's hard to do. Sometimes there's the guy mowing the grass. It might tell you what it is, but you whatever you do, whenever you go into every facility, every person at that facility is important to you. They have to be. You cannot skim over anybody at the plant because they can open doors for you that you don't even know exist. And it's just the right thing to do. I mean, it's just the right thing to do. It's very difficult to do what you said though. And you're right. It was a time when you could knock on the door, see the receptionist, and she would either reluctantly give you the name, or sometimes if you got lucky, she would give you the number, but it wasn't very often that you got that. They have barriers of entries that it's hard to get to. So it just takes time and effort, and keep at it.
I'm going to keep asking you questions down this road, but a thought came into my head. One of the guys that works with us, matter of fact, it was the same guy that made the comment about the mailbox and me being out there in the heat. He was so persistent at this one manufacturing facility, and I got a phone call from somebody from that facility, and they said, "Look, he's just so nice and he's so persistent. we have a family member that does our water treatment, so we're never going to leave that, but we don't want to hurt his feelings. Can you just let him know that?
That's awesome. That is awesome. And maybe they should have told him that up front. He wouldn't. He may not have done that, right?
There we go. And that's a good thing too. So if we have some end users of water treatment listening, it's okay to tell us no. It's okay to tell us the real story because we're going to do what we say we're going to do. We're going to follow up. And if you don't want that, if that's never going to come to be a win-win, let us know that so we can give that to somebody else.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's if it's not a win-win, it's not worth doing. There's no doubt about that. No doubt.
Fred, let's say we were consistent and we did get the appointment with the general manager or the plant engineer, and we went ahead and we got to the survey. Over your 35 years, what are the must do's when we're doing that survey to make sure that we're seeing, we're talking about, we're asking questions?
Okay, so again, it's both verbal and nonverbal things that you pick up when you're talking to them, but you have to find out what's really allowing you in the door, whatever that is, whether it be something that they're interested in your sustainability issues, that maybe they're interested in. They heard that you can handle a big boiler, and they know that you take care of the power plant down the road, and they say, well, if he can handle that, he can surely take care of us. But you have to find out what is important to them. It's not a sales technique. It's a fact. You have to find out what's important to them. And if you can find out that information, and sometimes they again, they don't say to you, oh, thank goodness you're here and here are my problems. But you can go in and you can ask them some questions that, are you having any issues with cycling up your boiler, or are you having any issues with uh, too much water being used, some things like that. You just have to ask them questions, and again, listen to what they say, and do a little research before you go in there to find out what kind of plant they do. Are they, they a crushed bean plant? Okay, what does that mean? And try to find out some of that information before you go in there. So you have to be their advocate. You have to be their helper to get to the right thing, whatever that is, whatever that is. And, we ran across this just a couple of weeks ago, and they changed the source of the water from the river to a well. And the well water, of course, is super high in connectivity, and they're getting lower cycles, and they're blowing through a bunch of water, and they're asking for help. Okay, well, we've got several options to help them on that one. So you just have to listen to what they say, but be very attentive to their needs.
An example comes to mind. A couple of years ago, we were doing a survey and they recently did some work their incumbent water treater wanted them to do. And they wanted them to feed sodium hypochlorite. And where they put it was right in front of a stainless steel heat exchanger. And Scale Up Nation, if you don't know, the chlorides will attack the stainless steel there, and you pretty much just have a spaghetti strainer after a couple of weeks or months there. Now, my question with that is, let's say we're on the survey, we see something like that. We want to let them know that we have knowledge that this isn't the best thing to do, and the incumbent water treater should not have recommended that. How do we do that gracefully?
Well, that's a tough one, but I certainly don't tell them when I'm first there the first time all of my solutions to the problems. You cannot do that to them. First, they have to have some trust in you and believe in you. So we go in and we do a survey, we look for things, and then we say to them, look, here's what we found. When can we have a follow up meeting? We have identified some very significant items that will save you money and enhance your operations. And so you try to build some sort of anticipation on their part to want you to come back. If they're not inviting you back, you're probably not there. And not you don't connect with everybody. That's not how it works. But if you are doing it right and you're listening and you're able to help them out with their problems, they will invite you back. And then you can present that. I can remember as a young water treater just spewing out all the information right away, and they said thank you very much, and they gave it to the competitor and stayed right where they were. That's not fun. I don't enjoy that. So now I definitely tell them all the information, but I don't necessarily download it all right up front.
We used to put every single recommendation in our proposal notes that we left with the customer. And when we went to follow up, we came in through the back door of this particular customer and we saw the water treater that had the business, and they had a copy of our proposal and they were just checking it off. So I think there definitely is something to what you're saying.
Yeah, we've all had that happen before. So it's I would just say as a younger person, don't be too overzealous at first. Try to place your value along the way with them when at the appropriate time. And when is that appropriate time? Well, you kind of have to go with your gut on that.
Speaking of the proposal, let's say we had a successful survey. We went back, maybe we worked with a couple people in our company. We found what we thought would be the best solution based on how they answered our questions and what issues they told us that we were having. So, what absolutely positively must be in a proposal on the Fred Shurtz list of has to be in a proposal? And what are some techniques to make sure we're delivering that right? That everybody's just not focused on price. They're not hearing everything that you're saying until you tell them what the price tag is. What are some of your tips with your experience?
A very good question, Trace. So when you're in water treatment, as you know, and you've said this many times, and we agree, we are in asset protection mode. We are there to save their equipment. They have millions of dollars worth of equipment, and the water treatment is a minuscule part of that cost. But it's a big deal if they go through, then they lose that. So one of the things I did learn in my previous jobs was to understand the difference between cost and price. There's a huge difference between cost and price. The price of the chemical is only $100 a drum, but it costs you $500,000 in replacing a chiller. So you've got to understand that it's better to invest enough money to do it right than it is to go with the lowest price every time. You have to go with what is best fit for their situation, and that means you have to protect their equipment. You have to have somewhere in a proposal. You have to show here's what we're doing better than you're getting now, and that would be asset protection. It could be water savings. It could be green technology that is still asset protecting. But all of those things have some of those things, and if the more you have in there, the better you have. There's just no doubt about that.
So, what's something that you have found that allows you to make your point or allow the customer to understand more about the equipment that they have on site? What are some of your must haves within the proposal?
Well, I would say in the proposal, the writing part of it is not as important as the presentation part of it. So you have to be able to with them, and any good salesperson or any good water treatment guy needs a pen and a piece of paper. So you draw out things. Here's where you are. Here's how this thing is really working, and here's how we see it work, and here's what we're trying to do that. So you might have to draw something out for them, and many times they'll say, well, how do you? I don't believe your water savings numbers. What do you mean you don't believe me? I said these are the laws of chemistry and physics. They're not me. They're really not me. So then you might have to go through the quick formulation with them, and I've been doing this for so many years. I don't look that up. I know it. I know how to figure the blowdown in the water savings to them, and I show them that kind of thing. So but you got to have some sort of. It's more than what you put in writing. It's you have to have some sort of interaction with them, whether that be drawing something up or somehow getting them to. And if you can, my goodness, if you can explain it well enough, a lot of times they'll come to their own conclusion, and now you've got something because it's so obvious that this is better if they come to their own conclusion.
Fred, what happens when you get an ally, the person you're speaking with, you've given them the presentation, the proposal, they've come to the conclusion that you're the best person to be in here as their water treater, and they say, I need to take it up the chain. I'll take all your information and I'll let them know what you told me. What do you do with that?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So first off, when that happens, you're not talking to the decision maker ahead of time. So prior to doing that, you try to gather I'm just going to step back 2 weeks prior to that, okay, and say, okay, is this a committee? Is this solely your responsibility? And hopefully they tell you the truth, because sometimes they don't. They'll say, yes, it's all up on me. And then you get to that point and now you're kind of you're not there yet if you've got that. So you have to, if they want to present this along up the ladder, you've got to try to find a way to get with them along that journey. I don't know that you can always do that. Being perfectly honest, sometimes you're blocked out and you just can't get there. But if you can get a chance to get in front of that committee, now you're cooking. You've got a real good chance at it. But that's a tough one, Trace. I think we've all faced that one before. And I sure wish I could just wiggle my nose and go right to it. And there's no one answer to that one.
You're definitely right. We should be qualifying people along the way. So, not that they're not going to help us in the journey, but they may not be the decision maker. Somebody told me this a long time ago, and I think it's such a great way to ask a hard question. You never want to say, Fred, are you the guy that's going to make the decisions, or is that
Right.
somebody else?
Right.
So that just leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouth. But the advice that I received was the last time you chose a water treatment vendor, what was that process? Can you share that with me? And then, based on what they say, you can ask some questions. Again, hard questions in a soft way, and getting real answers back. Hopefully, nobody would say, "Yes, I'm the sole decision maker," and they have nothing to do with that process. But unfortunately, we've probably all experienced that.
Yeah, well, I would say this: hard selling just does not work. It's not in anybody's best interest to be a hard seller. You need to be a soft seller and somebody that, again, gets on their side of the fence, helps them get what they need to get. As long as you can help them get what they need to have, then they'll help you get what you need to have. So then you've got a partnership and you can work towards something then.
So let's say in this instance, we went ahead and we secured that business. We high fived each other. They signed, or were to the point where they need to sign the contract. And now the back offices get involved. We're good with the plant engineer, they're good with us. And now all legal gets involved. And they now send a request over. Let's say they've got a 500-ton chiller with a cooling tower on it, and they want $80 million of insurance. How do you handle all that back end stuff?
Yeah. Well, I don't know that I've ever had $80 million worth of insurance
It
in
was for
business.
effect.
Yes, although we have had to have that upped and upped and upped and up over the years as we go. Oh, it's so difficult to do that. But if you have an advocate in there, you need the advocate in there to help you get through this process. So we have a pretty good staff behind us they're really pleasant. They're easy to work with as far as setting customers up and getting through some of those things. Never really been stopped from a legal from the lawyers saying no, you can't do our water treatment. We've never really been stopped that way. So that's not usually an obstacle. Usually it's terms and things like that. If you want to go with terms, and a lot of people like to extend their terms, and that puts a bind on your cash flow when you extend those terms. So we do a pretty good job of collecting. I think our average collection is 45 days or 40 days or 39. Last month, I think it was 39. So we do a pretty good job of inviting our customers to pay on time. Yeah.
Yeah, we did the work. Please pay us.
Right. The point of it is you have to completely go through the bottom tier to the top tier, and that includes my team and their team. And once that's done, you have something.
Fred, now that we've got everything signed, we got everything started, how do we make sure that we maintain the relationship that we built in the very beginning of this process, and we're continually building how successful their water treatment program is throughout the years?
Yeah, there's no shortcut here. This is you've made the promises, you've talked the talk. You are now going to walk the walk. We just don't lose business. We're not going to lose business because it's all about the hustle. You've sold the sizzle with the steak, so let's go show them what we're talking about here. And so you've got to roll up your sleeves, take care of the questions, but then once you get going, you have to get asked, continually ask for feedback. Okay, where are, when we first came to you, this was an important issue. Are we addressing it properly? Are we doing what we need to do here? Is there anything else we can do that helps you out along the plant? I see Joe over there working on his heat exchangers, clean them up. Are they from this plant? Well, no, they're from our plant in Iowa. Okay, what's going on there? And so you might be able to help them out with other things. You're not necessarily going to sell them any chemicals for that, because that's not what it's about. It's about helping them out and making them look good. If you can help them out, you're going to be fine.
We had a very similar situation where somebody was bringing in scaled equipment from another facility out of state. And in this case, they actually asked us what they should be doing. And they asked us if we could do that business that was out of state. And of course, that wasn't in our territory. But because of our affiliation with all the people we knew in the Association of Water Technologies, we were able to put them in contact with somebody they absolutely loved. So, with that, I want to segue over to the Association of Water Technologies. You and I have both been in volunteer leadership. So, I wanted to ask you, how did you get involved with the Association of Water Technologies? But more importantly, why?
Okay, how did I get involved with it is pretty much that's the easy question. I got involved because, again, I started with nothing. I came from a big company. They basically took care of all the chemical pumps and all the reagents and all the controllers and all those things. So I didn't really have any experience in that area. So uh, that's why going to the conference was such a big deal to me. I picked up a lot of information from there. So that was a really good thing to have. So AWT, when they have their convention, I still go every year. I mean, I have to, because there's always something there that's of value to you. And over time, you'll see things in there that you're like, really, this is in here, but it actually works. And some of the green technologies that we've implemented, they really work. And so that's what I like about the AWT. It's really helped out. And yes, we have done some volunteer work in there. And just let me say that the people that are on the board of AWT, I have tremendous respect for. I was fortunate enough to be on there for 3 years, but the especially the leadership team, and you were one of them, Trace. Is wow, what a time effort that goes into that, and the people really care about the organization, and they're really trying to do what's best for all of us, and they haven't lost sight of that. So I'm very, very appreciative of what everybody has done that has been an officer in the AWT.
My dad was involved a little bit with AWT. I think my very first conference was in 96, 97, when it was in Washington, D.C. My dad and I drove up there from Richmond, Virginia. But it really wasn't until I got more involved in the inner workings when I worked for somebody else that I met a gentleman named James Malloy. And he was the one that told me all about AWT. And when I started my own firm, he said, you got to save whatever the membership rate is off your first check from your customer. And it needs to go to the AWT because it will grow your business. It will grow your mind. It will grow your networks. That was the why that I joined. What was your why?
Yeah, you know what? I think it might have been James Malloy. I'm serious. I mean, so when I came out, I had to find an initial blender, and I was in southwestern Indiana, and he was in Middle Tennessee, which really is only a 2 hour drive or so. And so I went down and talked to him, and it might have been him. It might have been Gary Garcia, another one of the guys that when we first started into the business, that these guys have been blending for years, and so it might have been them, but eventually it ended up. I ended up with Brown Labs as my blender. They blended for me up until 2016, and then I decided to blend for myself. Still maintained a great relationship and friendship with Lee, even though I think I was his second or third largest customer at the time. because they still blend. But yeah, the, it's so long ago. I'm trying to think. I really think it was James Malloy as well for me.
So there you go. If it's the AWT for you, or maybe there's another organization out there, if you know the value that it brings, don't keep that to yourself. Let other people know, because Fred, you and I would have never met had it not been James recommending that we join the AWT.
Yeah, a long time ago. Right, right. And so many lifelong friends. That's just part of it. And sharing, just like you said, you had a an account that was not in your geographic region. I've done that 10 times probably since doing that, because I don't have to have all of the business in every state. I just need the business in my state. You know what I mean? Where I am. But, and it's, you can help each other out. And 99% of the time, we want to help each other out. It's been phenomenal experience for me.
Well, Fred, this has been great learning about your career, especially the anatomy of getting new business. I love the roadmap that was created in this interview, but I'm not quite done giving you questions yet. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Lightning round. Here it comes. Boom.
All right. So
All right.
here is question number one. If you could go back in time and talk to your former self on your very first day as an industrial water treater, what advice would you give yourself?
The advice I would give myself is to try to get to understand as much as you can about the equipment that people are using so you can better help them with the equipment. I was a little bit slower on knowing some of that. The chemistry came pretty fast, and I mean we know how to apply what products here, there, or wherever, but knowing a little bit more about the equipment was there. I mechanically I'm fine. I'm not an electrician by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand how things work. So I would say that.
Fred, what are the last few books that you've read?
Okay, so the last couple of books I've read are one of them is a book by Billy Walters. It's called Gambler: Secrets from a Life at Risk. So what am I doing that for? Well, he's an interesting guy. He started with nothing basically, and he's wasted a whole bunch of money in gambling throughout the time. I just find the book interesting, and now he's a multimillionaire. Heck, it's just a fun book, an interesting book to do it. And I like to my own personal bad habit is I like to sports bet on my app on my phone. I don't get carried away with it. It's just a little bit fun, and my wife thinks I'm addicted to it, but I'm not addicted to it because I quit every time it's baseball season. I can't bet on baseball; it's too long. So, and then the other book that I'm reading is called Outlive. It's the science and art of longevity, and it's really a book written about medicine and how we're kind of in reactive medicine now, where if you're sick, here, take a blood pressure pill or whatever. His theory is we need to be the next step forward, and then to prevent a lot of these things to go to the next level of medicine. So it's kind of a health book, really. Basically talks about how to prevent heart attacks and what cholesterol really means to you, and all of that kind of thing. So those are the books I've been reading here lately.
When they make the movie about your life, who do you want playing Fred?
Oh gosh. Okay, I'll tell you who I don't want to do it, and that's George Clooney. Was just way too good looking for me, so he's not going to be the guy. um, I don't know if I think there are not a lot of actors that I look up to. There really aren't. So I'd want somebody that I look up to, and the only one I can think of that I really look up to is Dutch Ronald Reagan, and he can. And I would love it if he did, but quite frankly, I'm not worthy of him acting like me because he's been a president of the United States. He's one of the guys that I really think is a genuine person who believes in the United States, and so I love Ronald Reagan.
If you could talk to anybody throughout history, who would it be with and why?
If I could talk to somebody, it'd probably be my grandfather or my great grandfather, because when my grandfather was born in 1881, and he died in 1967. At the time of his death, he had lived through like 45% of all U.S. history. That's a lot. And his dad was even more. He lived. He was born in 1848, and he also lived to 86 years old. I'd like to spend some time with those folks, just kind of getting to know how their life was and how we got from the mid 1800s to where we are now. I really think that if they were to move forward and see where we are now, they wouldn't be able to handle it. It's such a different world.
Well, we've definitely enjoyed spending time with you today and getting to know more about Fred Shurtz. Thank you for coming on the Scaling Up H2O podcast.
It's been a pleasure, Trace. I love this podcast. You've done a very good job at it, and I really appreciate you asking me on.
Scaled Up Nation, I did the introduction to this interview by talking about the Association of Water Technologies, and I would have never had the opportunity to meet Fred had it not been for the Association of Water Technologies. Now, just holding a membership card to an organization, I don't think is enough. If you just want to be a member, that is plenty. But if you want to get the most out of it, you've got to give to it. Now, whether this is the AWT, whether this is the International Water Conference, or whatever organization you want to fill in the blank with, the more you put in, the more you get out. But there's something interesting that happens. I think whatever you put in gets multiplied by a factor of 10. I've experienced that, but I think you have to put a minimum threshold in before you're able to start seeing that getting out. So if you just attend one conference call and that's it, you're probably not going to get much payback from that. But if you are now helping the committee on a regular basis that's having that conference call, and people can depend on you that you're getting things done, that you're helping others get things done, people see that and they will want to help you. That's been the story of my entire volunteer career. I started with the AWT back in 2004, and that was when I was told you needed to make sure you had money to join the AWT. I don't even know what the membership is now, but I can tell you it's not very much. When you join an organization, the next thing you need to do is figure out how you're going to serve that organization. Because what you're going to do is you're going to meet other people that serve that organization. And now you have that commonality with all of those people. And in serving together, you're going to become friends with all of those people. And most likely, you're going to meet people that have expertise in areas that you do not have. So now you've created a network. When you see something out in the field and you're not sure what your next step needs to be, you now know who to call. And those people know that they can call you. Nation, I was so privileged. Not only did I get to lead the marketing committee almost instantly when I first started with the Association of Water Technologies, I then got elected to the board of directors. And then I was honored to be president of the Association of Water Technologies. And now I'm on the past president's council, and I work with the education committee. So with all of those years, and that spreads way over 20 years, I'm sorry to say, but with that, I've met so many people and I've helped so many people, and so many people have helped me. I cannot imagine my water treatment career without that experience. So I know everybody's busy. I know you probably don't have time to do anything else. And it's always busy people that normally do have time for something else. So I want you to evaluate what are all the things that you are doing, and can you find a little time to give back to your community, knowing that by default and through your actions, that community will start to give back to you. Now, if you want to go to our events page, you can see all the organizations that we try to promote with this podcast. And you might look into what the volunteer leadership structures are and opportunities of these different organizations, and maybe you can help out. Nation, it's a big decision, but it is a right decision. And I cannot imagine where I would be if I wasn't urged to make that decision back in the early 2000s. Another person that I would not have met had it not been for my volunteer leadership within the Association of Water Technologies is James McDonald. And Nation, we would not have a weekly segment had James and I not met with the AWT. Thank goodness for the AWT, because here is a brand new installment of Drop by Drop with James.
Welcome to Drop by Drop with James, the podcast segment where we wonder, explore, think about, imagine, and learn industrial water treatment. You guessed it, drop by drop. Together. In today's segment, I have a what if for you. What if the deaerator vent is closed completely? I mean, there is no little puff of steam coming out of the vent at all. What is the purpose of the deaerator vent? How will it being completely closed impact your overall steam boiler system? Which parts will be impacted first? What will the short-term and long-term impacts be? How will this impact your chemical levels in the feed water and boilers? Could the closed vent have any impact upon the condensate system? How did it get closed in the first place? How far open should it actually be? How would you determine this? Do the operators and customer understand the importance of the deaerator vent? I'm James McDonald, and I want to encourage you to be like water by forming bonds with those around you, dissolving new knowledge, and making worthy ripples, drop by drop.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Scaling Up Nation, for, of course, listening to the Scaling Up H2O podcast. An ask I have of you is not just to listen, but to also share this podcast with your fellow water treaters. The more members that we get within the Scaling Up Nation, of course, the larger our community becomes, and that makes us better one water treater at a time. We can only do that with your help, and I want to thank you for helping that mission out. We'll have a brand new episode for you next week, and until then, take care, folks.